1913, and obviously the president at the time as well was Woodrow Wilson, and he was their puppet. And so when the politicians passed the law or passed the bill to say that a central bank should be set up, Wilson basically signed it because he was already an agent of the central bankers. So there's a very good book out there that talks about just this summary that I've just given just now. It's called The Creature from Jackal Island. It's by, I believe the author is G. Edward Griffin. So there are some other events as well which seem disconnected from the setting up of a central bank in America. One of them was the sinking of the Titanic in 1912. Now, J.P. Morgan, who I mentioned earlier that he had an agent at Jackal Island for the sake of the secret meeting that took place to set up a central bank in America. J.P. Morgan had an agent there. J.P. Morgan is actually the one that owned the White Star Line, the company that built the Titanic. And J.P. Morgan as well is the one that was funding Nikola Tesla when Tesla was doing his experiments. And then when Tesla said that he wanted to provide energy to people for free without them paying anything, J.P. Morgan said, I'm not going to fund anything that you're going to invent if it doesn't have a meter on it, because J.P. Morgan was all about making money, whereas Nikola Tesla wanted to provide everyone with free energy. So anyway, just going back to the story of the Titanic, J.P. Morgan owned the White Star Line that built the Titanic, and in a book called The Secret Terrorists, and in some other books as well as a lot of documentaries, it is said that J.P. Morgan coaxed a lot of rich people who were opposed to the setting up of a central bank in America. And there were the three of the richest men at the time. Remember, we're talking about 1912. Three of the richest men in the world were Benjamin Guggenheim and Theodore Strauss and John Jacob Astor, who was actually the richest man in the world at the time. They were all coaxed or enticed into going onto the Titanic. And there were many rich people as well on board the Titanic. J.P. Morgan himself should have also been on the ship, but at the last minute basically cancelled and did not go onto the ship. And he also had friends who were supposed to be there, but they never went into the Titanic. There was also a Jesuit priest, Francis Brown, I believe his name was, who also went on the ship, and then took loads of pictures of who was on board the ship, and then came off at the last stop before the ship, before the Titanic sailed for America. And then obviously after that the ship sank. So it said that basically the sinking of the Titanic was a planned event to get rid of all those who were opposed to the setting up of a central bank in America. And obviously the Titanic sank in 1912, and then in 1913, in December, we had the passing of the law that would set up the Federal Reserve as the central bank of America. And since then we've had the Federal Reserve has been there permanently in America, and has not been dissolved like the other banks that were dissolved. So maybe just before I forget as well, I just want to mention that JFK, one of the reasons why JFK was assassinated was because he went against the central bank and wanted to basically print his own money. He had actually started printing his own money, but a few days after he was killed, all that money that JFK had ordered to be printed was withdrawn from circulation. So yeah, that's just one reason why he was killed. Obviously there was the issue of the Bay of Pigs as well, and the fact that he was saying he was going to expose the agenda to enslave everyone. So in 1913 we see the setting up of a Federal Reserve in America, and then in 1914 we see the start of the First World War. So it is believed by many historians and researchers that the money for World War I came from basically the central bank in America, and basically American taxpayers unknowingly were paying for these wars to be started. So World War I, like I said, started in 1914, and then that after World War One, we saw the creation of a League of Nations, but the League of Nations failed when America basically refused to take part in it. So one of the reasons why we had World War Two, once again, with most of the money coming from the Federal Reserve. World War II was started in 1939 and went and ended in 1945 with the creation of the United Nations. And of course, the headquarters of the United Nations is in America, in New York. So this time, what they did is those who are involved in this agenda to bring about a new world order and the enslavement of everyone on earth basically made sure that they would put the headquarters of the UN in America, so that the Americans couldn't back out this time from taking part in the United Nations, which was one of the things that's being used to control the world. So yeah, so far I've covered from the very top. We know that it's Satan is ruling from behind the scenes, from behind the curtain, and Satan has his bride or his church here on this earth. Because Satan has a tendency of counterfeiting and basically imitating what God does, because God is a church, and that church is identified by the fact that they keep God's commandments, all 10 of them, not just 9, and that church, God's church, has the testimony of Jesus. So, and then I mentioned in my previous video on this particular topic that the Vatican, which is a city-state, rules the world through and controls the world through religion. So now I'm just talking about how the world is controlled and ruled through central banking. So just an interesting fact is that the Jesuits also have majority shares in the Bank of America as well, which is another bank in America, and they have interests in many other companies as well. So the Jesuits, or the Society of Jesus, are not just priests. They are actually, as I explained in one of my previous videos, they're actually soldiers. They are military, but they are also involved in many running businesses and have shares in many different companies. So something else as well that's been said many times by those who don't believe the official narrative is that these wars that we're having around the world, they're being funded by bankers, and in that bankers fund both sides of the war. So it doesn't really matter who wins the war, because the bankers will win in the end. It's been said that all wars are bankers' wars. All central banks are owned by Rothschilds, and it's been said many times that when we see some of the wars that we see happening, especially in the Middle East, sometimes it's because that those particular countries where the wars are happening would have refused to have a central bank. So basically we have wars to basically kick out whoever's ruling in that country, not just the president or the prime minister, but the whatever ruling party is there is being removed through force, because they would have refused the central bank. So Abe Lincoln and JFK, like I said, were assassinated because of fighting against central banking. There were assassinations and attempted assassinations as well on other presidents. If you want to know more about that, there's a book called The Secret Terrorists by Bill Hughes, and you can download it as a PDF. It's for free. So one of the things that, remember, even JFK spoke about how he wanted to expose this agenda to enslave every man, woman and child, and I think he said that 7 days before he was assassinated. So one of the things that the bankers want to do is enslave everyone through what is called CBDC. CBDC basically stands for central bank digital currency. It's currency that is digital and it cannot be handled physically, like the printed money that we have nowadays. So just so no one is confused, the paper money, the printed paper basically that we use as currency, is basically being used by the central banks as well. It's their money, but what they don't like is that when, let's say for instance, I go shopping with cash, they can't tell what I'm buying. They want to know what I'm buying. They want to have control of that, and they actually want to have control so much that they actually they want to bring about the central bank digital currencies which can be programmed so that they can actually expire, and then that you can't actually save up digital currencies. You have to spend them almost as soon as you get them. And also what's going to happen potentially, and I think this will actually be done because we saw it being done during COVID, is that they want to control everyone to the extent that they want to control where you use or where you buy, where you do your shopping, basically. So for me, I'm in a place called Juliusdale. What might happen is that if I'm using central bank digital currency, I may not be allowed to go to Mutare, which is the nearest big town to me. There is a smaller town near me. I might be told that I have to do my shopping in Nyanga, which is in Nyanga town, which is the nearest town to me. I might not be allowed to use digital currency in Mutare because, remember, everything is connected to the climate change hoax, where they're saying that if I travel a long way to do my shopping, basically my car is emitting emissions which contribute to climate change, so-called. So everything is tied in together, whether it's climate change, CBDC, and even this pandemic. Everything is tied in together. It's all about enslaving everyone. So that's really the agenda. Just to finish off, I wanted to mention a few banks, quite a few major banks that are involved in this agenda to bring about central bank digital currency, which is also mentioned in Revelation 13. So when it talks about buying and selling in Revelation 13, it's basically talking about CBDCs. Now, when I was a child and I was growing up and I used to read about the issue of buying and selling, that some of us won't be allowed to buy and sell, I used to wonder how it's actually going to be done. But now I understand that it's going to be done through CBDC. And we've even seen CBDCs being trialed in Nigeria through the e-Naira. Now, the Nigerians really did resist the e-Naira. They didn't want it, but it was forced on them, and the paper currency in Nigeria, most of it was confiscated and shredded. So I